Captain Jake Morrison had seen strange things during his 15 years piloting cargo ships through the Outer Rim territories, but nothing quite prepared him for what floated outside his cockpit window that morning. The distress beacon had led him to this remote asteroid field, where most sensible pilots feared to venture. What he found wasn't the expected wreckage of a human vessel. Instead, an elegant alien craft drifted silently among the rocks, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly silver sheen that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The ship's design defied everything Jake knew about spacecraft engineering. It curved and flowed like liquid metal frozen in motion, with no visible seams or joints. Most unsettling of all, it appeared completely intact despite broadcasting an emergency signal. Jake's cargo hauler, the Iron Phoenix, was built for reliability rather than beauty. Its boxy frame and exposed engine housing looked crude next to the alien vessel's graceful lines. He'd retrofitted it himself over the years, adding extra shielding and upgrading the life support systems. It might not win any design awards, but it had kept him alive through more close calls than he cared to count. The emergency beacon continued its rhythmic pulse as Jake maneuvered closer. Standard protocol dictated he should report the find to Earth Command and wait for a proper first contact team. But something about the beacon's pattern seemed desperate, almost pleading. Against his better judgment, Jake found himself extending his ship's docking tube toward what appeared to be an airlock on the alien craft. The docking process proved surprisingly smooth. Whatever technology the aliens used, it seemed compatible with human systems. Jake's instruments showed a successful seal, though he couldn't shake the feeling that the alien ship had somehow adjusted itself to accommodate his crude docking tube. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Before entering the alien vessel, Jake donned his environmental suit and checked his sidearm. He'd encountered enough hostile wildlife on remote planets to know that caution kept you breathing. The airlock cycled through its sequence, and Jake stepped into a corridor that defied his expectations once again. The interior glowed with the same soft luminescence as the hull, emanating from the walls themselves rather than any visible light source. The corridor stretched ahead in a gentle curve, its surfaces covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow when he wasn't looking directly at them. The air itself felt different, charged with an energy that made his skin tingle even through his suit. Jake's boots made no sound on the strange flooring material. It yielded slightly under his weight, yet felt solid enough to support him. Everything about this place suggested technology far beyond human understanding. He wondered what kind of beings could create something so beautiful, yet alien. Following the gentle curve of the corridor, Jake discovered that it led to what could only be the ship's central chamber. The room opened up into a vast space that seemed impossible given the vessel's external dimensions. Crystalline structures jutted from the walls at odd angles, pulsing with different colors in a rhythm that reminded Jake of a heartbeat. At the center of the room stood a raised platform, and upon it lay the most beautiful creature Jake had ever seen. She appeared humanoid in general shape, but possessed features that marked her as clearly alien. Her skin held a faint bluish tint that seemed to shimmer in the strange light, and her hair flowed around her head like she was floating underwater, defying gravity in impossible ways. Most striking were her eyes, which opened as Jake approached. They were large and luminous, colored a deep violet that seemed to contain entire galaxies within their depths. When she looked at him, Jake felt as though she could see straight through to his soul. The sensation was both terrifying and oddly comforting. The alien woman sat up slowly, her movements graceful despite what appeared to be considerable weakness. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in Jake's mind rather than reaching his ears through the air. The sensation was startling but not unpleasant, like having someone whisper secrets directly into his thoughts. "You came," she said, her mental voice carrying notes of relief and something else Jake couldn't identify. I had hoped, but I did not dare believe. Your kind has such a reputation for helping those in need, yet I feared the stories might be exaggerated. Jake's training kicked in despite his amazement. First contact protocols demanded careful communication and thorough documentation. But standing here in this impossible place, facing this beautiful alien being who seemed to know about humanity already, the protocols felt inadequate and somehow insulting. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison," he said aloud, hoping she could understand spoken language as well as project thoughts. "I received your distress signal. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" A smile played across the alien woman's features, transforming her face in a way that made Jake's breath catch. "Medical attention, perhaps, though not in the way you might understand. I am Lyra Lay of the Celestial Archives. My ship suffered damage during a storm in the void between dimensions. The emergency forced me to take refuge in your reality, but the transition has left me diminished." Jake's mind reeled at the casual mention of dimensional travel and void storms. Such concepts existed only in the wildest theories of human physicists. Yet here stood proof that reality was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone on Earth suspected. He forced himself to focus on the immediate situation rather than the staggering implications. "What kind of help do you need?" he asked, stepping closer to the platform. "My ship isn't much, but it's got good life support and a decent medical bay. If you need evacuation from here, I can take you somewhere safe." Lyra Lay's expression shifted to something Jake could only describe as fondness mixed with amusement. Such generosity, such immediate willingness to help a stranger. The stories about your species do not exaggerate after all. You offer aid without thought of reward or consequence, just as the legends claim. "Legends?" Jake frowned inside his helmet. "What legends?" "How do you know about humans? Your kind is spoken of in many corners of the galaxy, though few have encountered you directly. The tales paint you as beings of surprising nobility despite your primitive technology. You face impossible odds with courage that borders on madness. You show kindness to enemies and strangers alike. Most remarkably, you seem to thrive in conditions that would destroy other species." Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks at the praise, though he wasn't sure it was deserved. Humans had their share of flaws and failures, but before he could protest, Lyra Lay continued speaking, her mental voice taking on an urgent tone. "I do need your help, brave captain. The damage to my ship runs deeper than simple mechanical failure. The void storm that forced me here has left me partially phased between dimensions. I am slowly losing coherence, fading away from this reality. Without an anchor to stabilize my existence, I will soon cease to be." The explanation meant little to Jake in technical terms, but the desperation in Lyra Lay's mental voice was unmistakable. She was dying, or something equivalent to dying. The thought of this magnificent being simply fading from existence filled him with unexpected sorrow. "Tell me what you need," he said firmly. "If there's a way to help you, I'll find it." Lyra Lay's smile returned, brighter than before. "The solution is simple in concept, though it requires great trust between us. I need a dimensional anchor, a being from this reality to serve as my tether while my ship repairs itself. The process would require me to bond temporarily with your life force." "What does that mean exactly?" Jake asked, though something in his gut suggested he already knew the answer would be both wonderful and terrifying. "I would need to accompany you aboard your vessel, to remain in close proximity while the interdimensional breach heals. The bonding process would create a connection between us, allowing me to draw stability from your firmly anchored existence in this reality." Jake considered the implications. Taking an alien aboard his ship violated numerous regulations and safety protocols. The bonding process she described sounded potentially dangerous, and he had no way to verify her claims about dimensional anchoring or void storms. Any rational person would refuse such a request from a complete stranger. "How long would this bonding last?" he asked. "Perhaps several of your weeks. Though the exact duration depends on factors beyond my ability to predict. During that time, I would be entirely dependent upon your continued well-being. If something were to happen to you, I would fade away as surely as if you had refused to help at all." The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a familiar burden. Throughout his career, he'd made similar decisions to help stranded colonists, rescue survey teams from hostile planets, and transport medical supplies to plague-ravaged settlements. The risks were always high, the rewards often minimal, but Jake had never been able to turn away from someone in genuine need. "What do I need to do?" he asked. Lyra Lay's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. "You agree? Just like that? With no demands for compensation or guarantees of safety? You need help, and I can provide it," Jake said with a shrug. "Seems pretty straightforward to me." The alien woman shook her head in amazement. "Incredible. I had hoped the stories were true, but experiencing such selfless generosity firsthand still astounds me. No wonder your species has gained such a reputation among the starfaring races." "Yeah, well, let's save the praise until after we figure out how to keep you from fading away," Jake said, though he couldn't hide a smile at her words. "What's the first step in this bonding process?" Lyra Lay rose gracefully from the platform, her movements fluid despite her obvious weakness. "First, I must gather what few possessions I can carry. Then you will escort me to your ship, where the bonding can take place in relative safety. The process itself is intimate in nature, though not physical as your species might understand intimacy." Jake felt his cheeks warm again, but pushed the embarrassment aside. If mental intimacy was the price for saving her life, he could handle it. He'd endured worse discomfort for far less worthy causes. "Take whatever you need," he said. "My ship isn't luxurious, but there's a spare cabin and enough supplies for an extended journey. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Lyra Lay moved to one of the crystalline structures protruding from the chamber wall. When she touched it, a section of the crystal became transparent, revealing an interior space filled with objects that seemed to be made of condensed starlight. She selected a few items that Jake couldn't identify, each one disappearing into some sort of dimensional pocket rather than being carried in her hands. "I am ready," she announced after completing her preparations. "Though I should warn you, Captain Morrison, that the bonding process will change you as well as me. You will gain certain abilities and sensitivities that your species does not naturally possess. These changes may prove unsettling." Jake considered this new wrinkle, but found it didn't alter his decision. "I've adapted to stranger things. Let's get you to safety first, then worry about the details." As they made their way back through the corridor toward Jake's docking tube, Lyra Lay walked close beside him. Even through his environmental suit, he could feel warmth radiating from her presence. The sensation was comforting rather than concerning, like standing near a fireplace on a cold night. "Your ship," she said as they approached the airlock. "It has the look of a vessel that has seen much hardship but has been maintained with great care. This speaks well of your character, Captain." "She's not pretty, but she's reliable," Jake replied, feeling oddly proud at the alien's assessment. "The Iron Phoenix has gotten me out of more tight spots than I can count. She'll take care of us." They crossed through the docking tube and into Jake's familiar ship. The contrast between the alien vessel's flowing beauty and the Iron Phoenix's utilitarian design was stark, but Jake noticed that Lyra Lay showed no signs of disappointment or disgust. If anything, she seemed fascinated by the human engineering, running her fingers along the bulkheads with obvious interest. Remarkable, she murmured. Such direct, practical solutions to complex problems. There is an elegance in simplicity that my people often overlook in our pursuit of perfection. Jake led her through the ship's narrow corridors to the spare cabin he'd mentioned. The space was small but clean, with a comfortable bunk and basic amenities. He'd originally installed it for emergency passengers, never imagining he'd be hosting an interdimensional alien refugee. "This will serve perfectly," Lyrelei said, settling onto the edge of the bunk. "The bonding process can begin whenever you feel ready, though I understand if you need time to prepare yourself mentally for what is to come." Jake looked at this beautiful, mysterious being who had somehow ended up dependent on his help. The rational part of his mind screamed warnings about the risks he was taking, the regulations he was violating, and the impossibility of the entire situation. But the same impulses that had driven him to answer distress calls and help strangers throughout his career wouldn't let him hesitate now. "I'm ready when you are," he said. "Just tell me what I need to do." Lyrelei gestured for Jake to sit across from her in the small cabin. Her violet eyes seemed to glow brighter as she prepared to explain the bonding process. "Place your hands in mine, Captain Morrison. The connection begins with simple contact, then deepens as our life forces synchronize." Jake removed his gloves and reached out tentatively. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through his entire body. Not painful, but overwhelming in its intensity. Lyrelei's hands felt warm and impossibly soft, yet he could sense tremendous strength beneath the surface. Her skin seemed to shimmer with that same inner light that had illuminated her ship. "Do not resist the sensation," Lyrelei said, though now her voice seemed to come from inside his own thoughts. "Allow the connection to form naturally. Your mind is stronger than you realize, Captain. I can feel your determination, your courage, your genuine desire to help despite the risks. These qualities will serve as excellent anchor points." The tingling sensation spread up Jake's arms and throughout his body. He felt as though every nerve ending had suddenly become hyper-aware, picking up details about his environment that he'd never noticed before. The subtle vibration of the ship's engines, the faint circulation of air through the ventilation system, even the distant radiation from the asteroid field outside registered in his consciousness with startling clarity. More dramatically, Jake began to sense Lyrelei's presence in ways that went far beyond the physical. Her thoughts didn't invade his mind exactly, but he could feel the edges of her consciousness brushing against his own. The experience was intimate beyond anything he'd ever imagined, yet somehow not invasive. It felt like discovering that he'd been only half awake his entire life. Fascinating. Lyrelei's mental voice carried notes of surprise and delight. "Your neural patterns are far more complex than our scholars predicted. Most primitive species have simple, linear thought processes that are easy to map and understand. But human minds seem to operate on multiple levels simultaneously, processing logic, emotion, instinct, and imagination in parallel streams." Jake tried to focus on her words, but the sensory input flooding his consciousness made concentration difficult. He could feel Lyrelei's relief as the bonding stabilized her fading existence, her gratitude for his willingness to help, and underneath it all, something that felt like affection. The emotion was too complex for him to analyze properly in his current state. "The process is nearly complete," Lyrelei continued. "Soon you will be able to filter the enhanced perceptions and regain normal function. However, our connection will remain active for as long as the bond endures. You may occasionally sense my thoughts and emotions, just as I will be aware of yours. I apologize for the intrusion, but the alternative is my dissolution into nothingness." "Don't apologize," Jake managed to say aloud. "I agreed to this. We'll figure out how to make it work." As the intensity of the bonding process began to fade, Jake found himself looking at Lyrelei with new understanding. The connection between them felt natural now, like a conversation that had been going on for years rather than minutes. He could sense her relief at finding a compatible anchor, but also her concern about imposing on his life and freedom. "You're not imposing," Jake said, responding to her unspoken worry. "Though I have to admit, this is going to take some getting used to." Lyra smiled, and through their bond, Jake felt the genuine warmth behind the expression. "You adapt remarkably quickly, Captain. Most beings require days or weeks to adjust to telepathic contact, yet you are already learning to distinguish between your thoughts and mine." Jake stood up carefully, testing his balance as waves of enhanced perception continued to wash over him. His body felt different somehow, stronger and more resilient. Even the air in the cabin seemed cleaner and more energizing than before. Is this normal? I feel like I could run a marathon or lift twice my usual weight. The bonding process enhances certain physical capabilities as well as mental ones. Your species appears to have significant untapped potential that the connection is beginning to unlock. I confess, I am curious to observe how these changes will manifest over time. Before Jake could respond to her intriguing statement, the ship's proximity alarms began blaring throughout the Iron Phoenix. Jake's enhanced hearing made the sound almost painful, but it also allowed him to distinguish subtle variations in the alarm pattern that indicated multiple approaching contacts. "We've got company," Jake said, moving quickly toward the bridge. "And from the sound of those alarms, it's not friendly." Lyra followed close behind, her movements now more confident as the bonding provided her with stable existence in this reality. "Captain, I should warn you that my people's enemies may have tracked my dimensional breach to this location. If that is the case, they will attempt to capture both myself and anyone who has aided me." Jake slid into the pilot's seat and activated the ship's sensor array. What he saw on the display made his blood run cold. 3 ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the asteroid field, their configurations unlike anything in human databases. The vessels were angular and aggressive-looking, built for war rather than exploration or commerce. "Definitely not human," Jake muttered, studying the sensor readings. "And those energy signatures are off the charts. What exactly are we dealing with here?" "Void hunters," Lyra said, her mental voice tight with fear and anger. "A parasitic species that feeds on dimensional energy and destroys entire realities to sustain themselves. They have been pursuing me for many cycles, seeking to capture and drain the knowledge I carry." The lead Void Hunter ship began broadcasting a message on multiple frequencies. The voice that emerged from Jake's communication system was harsh and mechanical, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding metal. But somehow, through his connection with Lyra, Jake could understand every word. "Celestial Archivist, you cannot hide from us forever. Surrender yourself and the primitive you have bonded with, and we will grant you both quick deaths. Resist, and we will take great pleasure in extracting every memory from your minds before we drain your life forces completely." Jake felt Lyra's terror spike at the threat, but also her fierce determination not to let these creatures harm him. The intensity of her protective feelings surprised him, especially since they had known each other for less than an hour. Through their bond, he sensed that for her people, the act of dimensional bonding created obligations and connections that ran deeper than mere friendship. "They cannot be reasoned with or bargained with," Lyra warned. "Void hunters view all other forms of life as nothing more than food to be consumed. If they capture us, our suffering will be prolonged and terrible." Jake's hands moved over the Iron Phoenix's control systems with practiced efficiency. The cargo hauler wasn't designed for combat, but he'd added some defensive modifications over the years. More importantly, he knew these asteroid fields better than any alien invaders possibly could. "How fast can those ships move?" he asked, while plotting an escape route through the densest part of the asteroid field. "Faster than anything your species has built," Lyrelay replied honestly. But Void Hunters rely on brute force and overwhelming firepower. They are not subtle or clever tacticians. A skilled pilot in familiar territory might be able to outmaneuver them. Jake grinned as he fired up the Iron Phoenix's engines and dove deeper into the asteroid field. Lady, you picked the right human to bond with. I've been flying through these rocks for 15 years. They might be faster, but I know every hiding spot and shortcut in this whole sector. The first Void Hunter ship opened fire as Jake put the Iron Phoenix into a steep dive between two massive asteroids. Bolts of crimson energy sizzled past the cargo hauler's hull, leaving glowing scars on the rock faces. Jake pulled the ship into a tight spiral around a spinning asteroid, using its bulk as a shield while he plotted his next move. Impressive piloting, Lyrelay said, though Jake could feel her amazement through their bond, as well as hear it in her words. Your reflexes and spatial awareness have increased dramatically since our bonding. You are processing flight data faster than should be possible for an unenhanced human. Jake didn't have time to consider the implications of her observation. The Void Hunter ships had split up to cut off his escape routes, and their energy weapons were powerful enough to vaporize any asteroid he tried to use for cover. He needed a better strategy than simply running and hiding. Lyrelay, do you have any combat abilities? Weapons, shields, anything that might help even the odds? My ship's systems are still repairing themselves from the dimensional breach, she replied regretfully. However, our bonding has given you access to certain capabilities that your species does not normally possess. You should be able to interface directly with your ship's systems, enhancing their efficiency and responsiveness. Jake wasn't sure what she meant until he placed his hands on the primary control console and felt the Iron Phoenix respond to his thoughts rather than just his physical inputs. Suddenly he could sense the ship's status in exquisite detail, feeling the stress on the hull plating, the temperature of the engine cores, the exact position of every system and component. More remarkably, he found he could optimize the ship's performance in real time, adjusting power flow and system timing with precision that no human pilot should possess. The Iron Phoenix seemed to come alive under his enhanced control, responding to his intentions as if it were an extension of his own body. Now that's more like it, Jake said with satisfaction as he executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a cargo hauler. The ship twisted through a gap between asteroids that was barely wider than its hull, emerging behind one of the Void Hunter vessels. The alien ship spun to face him, but Jake was already moving again, using his new connection with the Iron Phoenix to anticipate and counter the enemy's targeting systems. He wasn't armed well enough to damage the Void Hunter directly, but he could make himself nearly impossible to hit. Your adaptation continues to exceed all expectations, Lyrelay said with wonder. I have bonded with members of 7 different species over the centuries, but none has shown such rapid integration of enhanced abilities. Humans truly are remarkable. Jake filed that information away for later consideration. Right now, he was too busy staying alive to properly process the revelation that Lyrelay had bonded with other beings before him. A part of him wondered about those previous partnerships and what had happened to them, but the question would have to wait. The second Void Hunter ship moved to flank him, while the third tried to drive him toward a massive asteroid that would limit his maneuvering options. Jake saw the trap closing, but also spotted an opportunity they had overlooked. The asteroid they were trying to herd him toward was actually the largest in a cluster of smaller rocks held together by their collective gravitational fields. Lyrelay, can you sense gravitational fields through our bond? I need to know the exact stress points in that asteroid cluster ahead of us. I can do better than sense them, she replied. Through our connection, I can share my people's understanding of dimensional physics. The knowledge should allow you to predict and manipulate gravitational interactions with great precision. Information flooded Jake's mind as Lyrelay shared her advanced scientific knowledge through their bond. Concepts that should have taken years to understand became clear and accessible in moments. He could suddenly see the asteroid cluster not as solid objects, but as a complex dance of gravitational forces and structural tensions. The Iron Phoenix's weapon systems were too weak to damage the Void Hunter ships directly, but they were more than capable of destabilizing the carefully balanced forces holding the asteroid cluster together. Jake targeted specific stress points with surgical precision, his enhanced understanding allowing him to predict exactly how the cluster would break apart. The result exceeded even his optimistic expectations. As the asteroids broke free from their gravitational bonds, they created a cascade of collisions and momentum transfers that turned the entire cluster into a storm of massive projectiles. The Void Hunter ships found themselves caught in the middle of an artificial asteroid storm, their superior speed and firepower useless against the chaotic forces Jake had unleashed. Two of the alien vessels were destroyed outright when house-sized chunks of rock struck them at tremendous velocity. The third managed to escape the immediate danger zone, but suffered severe damage that left it limping and unable to pursue. "Incredible!" Lyrelay said, as Jake piloted the Iron Phoenix clear of the destruction. "You used their own tactical advantage against them, turning their attempt to trap you into their destruction. Such creative thinking combined with precise execution. I begin to understand why humans have gained such a reputation as formidable opponents." Jake felt a surge of pride at her praise, amplified by the admiration he could sense through their bond. But he also remained focused on the immediate situation. The surviving Void Hunter ship was damaged, but not destroyed, and there might be more enemy vessels en route to this location. "We need to get out of here before reinforcements arrive," he said while plotting a course toward the edge of the asteroid field. "Do you know somewhere safe we can hide while your ship repairs itself?" "There is a place," Lyrelay replied thoughtfully. "A hidden facility maintained by my people for situations exactly like this. However, reaching it will require traveling through regions of space that are challenging for most species to navigate." "More challenging than what we just survived?" Jake asked with a grin. "In different ways, yes. The route passes through areas where the barriers between dimensions are thin. Reality becomes fluid and unpredictable. Even ships with proper shielding sometimes become lost between worlds, trapped forever in spaces that exist nowhere and everywhere simultaneously." Jake considered the risks as he accelerated toward open space. Behind them, the damaged Void Hunter ship was falling further behind, but he could see new contacts appearing at the edge of his sensor range. More enemies were definitely coming. "Sounds like we don't have much choice," he said finally. "Besides, I've got the best possible guide for interdimensional travel sitting right here with me." Lyrelay's smile was radiant with gratitude and something deeper. "Your trust in me is both touching and terrifying, Captain Morrison. I pray that my guidance proves worthy of your faith." As the Iron Phoenix left the asteroid field behind and entered hyperspace, Jake reflected on how drastically his life had changed in just a few short hours. This morning he had been a simple cargo hauler concerned with delivery schedules and profit margins. Now he found himself bonded with an interdimensional alien, enhanced with abilities he didn't understand, and fleeing through space from enemies that wanted to drain his life force. The strange thing was, despite all the danger and uncertainty, Jake felt more alive than he had in years. The bond with Lyrelay had awakened something in him that he hadn't even realized was dormant. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was eager to face them with his remarkable new companion at his side. 3 days into their journey toward Lyrelay's hidden sanctuary, Jake discovered that interdimensional travel was unlike anything he'd experienced before. The space between realities shimmered with colors that had no names, and sometimes he caught glimpses of impossible landscapes through the Iron Phoenix's viewports. cities floating in seas of liquid starlight, forests of crystalline trees that sang in harmonies he could feel in his bones, vast creatures swimming through cosmic dust clouds like whales through an ocean. "The beauty is overwhelming," Jake said as he watched a school of energy beings dance past the ship in spirals of pure light. "How do your people navigate through all this without going insane?" Lyrelei smiled from the co-pilot's seat she had claimed as her own. Over the past few days, she had started calling it her place, and Jake found he enjoyed having her constant presence beside him. "We train from childhood to filter the sensory input and focus on navigation markers, but I must confess, seeing these wonders through your enhanced perceptions has been a revelation. Your human perspective adds depth and emotional resonance that my people often miss." Through their bond, Jake could feel Lyrelei's genuine amazement at how his mind processed the interdimensional phenomena. Where her people saw navigation hazards and scientific curiosities, he found beauty and wonder that enriched the experience beyond mere survival. The connection worked both ways, though, and her vast knowledge helped him understand what they were witnessing. "Contact approaching fast," Jake announced, as his enhanced sensors detected movement in the dimensional flux around them. "Energy signature is massive, but it doesn't match the void hunters we faced before." A ship materialized from the swirling energies ahead of them, sleek and elegant in design but clearly built for war. Its hull gleamed with the same inner light that characterized Lyrelei's vessel, but this craft was larger and bristled with weapon systems that made Jake's defensive modifications look like toys. "Celestial Guard patrol ship," Lyrelei explained, her relief evident both in her voice and through their bond. "They must have detected the dimensional breach from my original ship and come to investigate." The patrol ship hailed them on frequencies that Jake's equipment shouldn't have been able to receive, but his enhanced abilities somehow translated the incoming transmission into understandable language. The voice that emerged from his speakers was melodious and formal, carrying the authority of long-established duty. "Unknown vessel. You are traveling in restricted dimensional space with what appears to be an unauthorized passenger of Celestial Archive heritage. Prepare for inspection and possible detention while we determine the nature of your business in this sector." "They don't know about our bonding yet," Lyrelei said quietly. "My people have protocols for dealing with primitive species, but those protocols assume basic first contact scenarios. Our situation is unprecedented and may cause complications." Jake opened a communication channel, drawing on his enhanced abilities to ensure the transmission would be properly received by the alien ship. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Iron Phoenix. I am carrying Celestial Archivist Lyrelei under emergency circumstances. She was attacked by void hunters and required immediate assistance to survive." A long pause followed his transmission, and Jake could imagine the debate taking place aboard the patrol ship. Through his bond with Lyrelei, he sensed her growing nervousness about how her people would react to their unconventional partnership. "Captain Morrison," the Celestial Guard voice finally responded, "you will dock with our vessel immediately for formal questioning. Archivist Lyrelei will be transferred to proper medical facilities, and you will be debriefed regarding your contact with Void Hunter forces." The formal tone carried an undertone of command that left no room for negotiation. Jake looked at Lyrelei, reading the concern in her violet eyes. "They want to separate us, don't they? The bonding process is not widely understood." "Even among my people," Lyrelei admitted. "Most Celestials view it as a desperate measure to be used only in the most extreme circumstances. They may not appreciate the depth of connection we have formed, or the benefits it has brought to both of us." Jake considered his options as the patrol ship maneuvered into position for docking procedures. He could refuse their orders and attempt to flee, but his cargo hauler would never outrun a purpose-built celestial warship in this dimensional space. More importantly, Lyrelay needed access to her people's technology to complete her recovery from the void storm damage. We'll play along for now, Jake decided. But I'm not letting them split us up permanently. We're partners in this, whether they like it or not. The docking process with the Celestial Patrol ship was far smoother than Jake's earlier experience with Lyrelay's damaged vessel. The alien's technology seamlessly integrated with his systems, creating a perfect environmental seal without any apparent effort. As they prepared to transfer ships, Lyrelay placed her hand on Jake's arm. Whatever happens during the questioning, remember that our bond is legitimate and beneficial, she said. Do not let their concerns about primitive contamination make you doubt what we have accomplished together. They crossed through the docking tube into a world of flowing architecture and soft illumination. The patrol ship's interior was beautiful, but sterile compared to the warm familiarity Jake had grown to associate with Lyrelay's presence. Several celestial beings awaited them, tall and elegant creatures who shared Lyrelay's general appearance but lacked her warmth and expressiveness. Archivist Lyrelay, the apparent leader said, in the formal tone Jake had heard over the communication system. You have caused considerable concern by disappearing from your assigned research sector. The unauthorized bonding with this primitive being compounds the irregularities of your situation. Jake bristled at being called primitive, especially since his enhanced abilities now let him perceive the subtle energy fields and dimensional structures surrounding the celestial beings. In some ways, his hybrid capabilities seemed more advanced than theirs. But he held his tongue, sensing through his bond with Lyrelay that patience would serve them better than confrontation. Guardian Commander Vorthak, Lyrelay replied with respectful formality. The bonding was necessary to preserve my existence after suffering dimensional displacement during a void storm. Captain Morrison risked his life to provide assistance when no other options were available. The circumstances may excuse the initial bonding, Vorthak acknowledged, but maintaining the connection beyond the immediate emergency violates several protocols regarding contact with undeveloped species. You will submit to separation procedures immediately. No, Jake said firmly, surprising everyone present, including himself. Lyrelay isn't property to be transferred around at your convenience. She's an individual with the right to make her own choices about her partnerships and bonds. The celestial beings exchanged glances that clearly communicated their amazement at being contradicted by a primitive. Commander Vorthak's expression hardened with what Jake interpreted as barely controlled arrogance. Human, you do not understand the complexities of dimensional bonding or its long-term consequences. The connection between you and Archivist Lyrelay could result in psychological contamination, genetic drift, or even reality distortion effects that threaten both of your existences. Then explain it to me, Jake challenged. I'm more than capable of understanding complex concepts, especially with the enhanced cognitive abilities the bonding has given me. Stop treating me like a child and start treating me like an equal partner in this situation. Through his bond with Lyrelay, Jake felt her surge of pride and affection at his willingness to stand up to her people's authorities. Her support gave him the confidence to continue pressing his case despite the obvious power imbalance. The human speaks with unexpected wisdom, Lyrelay said, stepping forward to stand beside Jake in a gesture of clear solidarity. Our bonding has been mutually beneficial, enhancing both his capabilities and my stability. He has proven himself worthy of partnership through both courage and competence. Commander Vorthak studied them both with obvious frustration. Your judgment may have been compromised by the bonding process itself, Archivist. Primitive attachment behaviors could be influencing your decision-making in ways you do not recognize. Or maybe, Jake said with growing irritation, you're so convinced of your own superiority that you can't recognize when a primitive species has something valuable to offer. I've seen what humans can accomplish when we're properly motivated and equipped. Your people could learn from our adaptability and determination instead of dismissing us as contamination risks." The tension in the docking bay was palpable as Jake's words challenged assumptions that had apparently gone unquestioned for centuries. Several of the celestial beings looked shocked at his audacity, while others seemed intrigued by his confident assertions. "Prove it," Commander Vorthak said suddenly. "If you truly believe the bonding has created benefits rather than complications, demonstrate these supposed enhancements. Show me that your partnership with archivist Liralai has produced capabilities that justify violating our established protocols." Jake looked at Liralai, who nodded encouragingly through their shared connection. Together, they approached one of the control consoles lining the docking bay, its surface covered with displays and interfaces that used celestial technology far beyond human understanding. "This navigation system," Jake said after studying the console for a moment, "it's designed to track dimensional currents and predict reality fluctuations. But the algorithms are too rigid, too focused on avoiding risks instead of exploiting opportunities." He placed his hands on the interface, feeling the system respond to his enhanced abilities the same way the Iron Phoenix had. But now, with access to Liralai's knowledge through their bond, he could understand and manipulate technology that should have been completely alien to him. The console's displays shifted and flowed as Jake optimized the navigation algorithms in real time. His human intuition for pattern recognition combined with Liralai's scientific knowledge to create solutions that neither could have achieved alone. What had been a functional but conservative system became an elegant and efficient tool that could navigate dimensional space with unprecedented precision. "Remarkable," one of the other celestial beings murmured. "The efficiency improvements are substantial, and the predictive accuracy has increased by over 30%. How is this possible?" "Human minds operate differently than ours," Liralai explained proudly. "They process multiple data streams simultaneously and excel at finding creative solutions to complex problems. Combined with our scientific knowledge through the bonding connection, these capabilities become incredibly powerful." Commander Vorthak examined the modified navigation system with obvious amazement and growing respect. "I have never seen optimization algorithms of this sophistication, especially ones developed in real time without extensive testing and validation procedures." "That's because you approach problems like scientists," Jake said with a grin. "Humans approach them like survivors. We don't have the luxury of extensive testing when our lives are on the line. So we've learned to trust our instincts and adapt quickly to new situations." "The Void Hunters who attacked us discovered this firsthand," Liralai added. "Captain Morrison destroyed 2 of their ships and disabled a 3rd using tactics they could never have anticipated. His strategic thinking combined with enhanced piloting abilities made him more effective than an entire squadron of traditional fighters." The revelation that Jake had successfully engaged and defeated Void Hunter forces caused a stir among the celestial beings. Through his bond with Liralai, Jake sensed that such victories were extremely rare and highly valued by her people. "You fought Void Hunters and survived?" Commander Vorthak asked with new respect in his voice. "Our most experienced warriors consider them among the most dangerous enemies in known space. How did a single primitive vessel achieve such a victory?" Jake spent the next hour describing the battle in detail, explaining his tactical decisions and how the bonding enhancements had allowed him to outmaneuver superior forces. The celestial beings listened with growing fascination as he demonstrated the kind of creative problem-solving that humans took for granted, but apparently represented revolutionary thinking to their species. "Your adaptability is indeed remarkable," Commander Vorthak admitted when Jake finished his account. "Perhaps our protocols regarding primitive species are based on outdated assumptions. If bonding with humans can produce such dramatic improvements in capability, we may need to reconsider our approach to first contact situations. The bonding works both ways, Lirelei emphasized. Captain Morrison has gained enhanced abilities, but I have also benefited tremendously from his human perspective and problem-solving methods. Our partnership has made us both stronger than we were separately. Jake felt a warm glow of satisfaction at her words, amplified by the affection and pride flowing through their bond. Over the past few days, their connection had deepened into something that felt like the most natural thing in the world. The thought of being separated from Lirelei now seemed not just unpleasant, but genuinely harmful to both of them. "Very well," Commander Vorthak said after a long moment of consideration. "Given the exceptional circumstances and demonstrated benefits of your bonding, I am prepared to authorize a continuation of your partnership under official observation. However, you will both need to undergo regular evaluations to ensure the connection remains stable and beneficial." Jake and Lirelei exchanged looks of relief and joy. Through their bond, he could feel her happiness at being allowed to continue their journey together, along with her excitement about the adventures that might lie ahead. "There is one additional complication," Commander Vorthak continued. "The Void Hunter forces you encountered were likely scouts for a larger invasion fleet. Our intelligence suggests they are planning a major assault on several dimensional nexus points, including the one near your human space." "Earth is in danger?" Jake asked with sudden concern. "Potentially, yes. The Void Hunters view your species as a particularly tempting target due to your rapid technological development and strong life force. A successful invasion would provide them with enormous amounts of energy to fuel further conquests." Jake felt his protective instincts flare at the threat to his home world. Through the bond, Lirelei shared his determination to prevent such a catastrophe. "What can we do to help?" Lirelei asked. "Captain Morrison's tactical abilities and our bonding enhancements might prove useful in developing countermeasures." Commander Vorthak nodded slowly. "Indeed, your unique partnership may be exactly what we need to combat this threat. Human unpredictability combined with celestial technology could provide the edge necessary to defeat the Void Hunter invasion." "Then let's get started," Jake said with grim determination. "I didn't save Lirelei from those monsters just to let them destroy my home world. Time to show them what happens when they threaten humanity." As the Iron Phoenix was taken in tow by the Celestial Patrol ship for the journey to their hidden base, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since answering that distress signal. He had gained abilities beyond his wildest dreams, formed a bond deeper than anything he'd thought possible, and somehow found himself at the center of a galactic conflict that would determine the fate of Earth itself. The challenges ahead would be enormous, but Jake felt ready to face them with Lirelei at his side. Together, they represented something new and powerful, a fusion of human determination and alien knowledge that their enemies had never encountered before. The Void Hunters had no idea what they were about to face, and Jake intended to keep it that way until it was too late for them to adapt. As Lirelei settled beside him for the journey ahead, she smiled and spoke directly into his mind through their bond. "Whatever comes next, my human, we will face it together, and I suspect the universe will never be quite the same." Jake smiled back, feeling the truth of her words resonate through every enhanced sense and ability their partnership had given him. The adventure was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see what they would accomplish together in the battles to come.